Guilty Gear Strive is one of the biggest fighting games out there right now, and as a guy who's not exactly good at fighting games, I decided to dedicate 1 month to try and improve as much as I could. This month was difficult, with highs and lows all throughout, but by the end, I will have achieved mastery, pushing myself to the limit, and along the way shared a bunch of critical knowledge about fighting games as a whole. So, without wasting any more of your time, let's get into the month of Strive. I started the month out just like I would any other fighting game, learning the basic buttons, mechanics, just anything I needed to get going. I spent a lot of time this first week in mission mode. It was a nice and slow introduction to a lot of the different mechanics in Strive, which I'll be explaining later in this video. For now though, I'm gonna have to get a main. At the time of recording, there are 29 different characters to choose from, all with unique mechanics, gauges, movement options, and I just picked Soul Bad Guy. I'll get into why I chose Soul later, but one of the primary reasons was that he was just very simple in a game that already has a lot to learn, so picking him up just seemed like a no-brainer, which coincidentally describes most Soul players, but I'm getting ahead of myself. First off, I just needed to adjust to the new movement. Guilty Gear is a very different fighting game from, say, a Tekken or a Street Fighter, in that there's a ton more movement options, particularly in the air. You got double jumps, super jumps, and air dashes, which ultimately is why these types of games are just considered air dashers. I'd played these types of games before, but that was from a long time ago, so readjusting was a bit of a challenge. This week I was focused on just the basics, learning key moves, practicing combos, a lot of combos actually, spent a little too much time learning pretty inapplicable combos at the skill level, and figuring out one of the core mechanics of Guilty Gear games, the Roman cancel. A Roman cancel is, well, a cancel into neutral that you can do basically whenever you're not in the middle of getting your ass beat. Red RC is your big, flashy, stylish, cool Roman cancel you send on offense. It comes out when you Roman cancel in the middle of any attack that hits, and it's pretty useful for both combo extensions and mix-ups. Purple RC pops up whenever you're in the move's startup or recovery frames. It's a useful cancel for staying safe during whiffed attacks, but if you're me, Purple RC just means you've mistimed your Red RC. Yellow RC is your defensive tool. It'll come out whenever you're in block stun and gives you back your turn with a plus 10 frame advantage. Blue RC basically covers any time you're not attacking or blocking. It's great for catching your opponent whiffing or some other movement shenanigans. I'm oversimplifying a bunch with these explanations, but this should give you the basic idea of how these work. There's also stuff you could do with the Roman cancel, like drift and fast cancel it, but we can cover those another time. I spent the rest of the week just messing around and getting used to the game before I hopped into ranked matches. I spent a whole hour one day just in arcade mode fighting and mauling against Extreme Nagoriyuki. Yes, dude, holy shit, finally. Oh my god, fuck. Spent some time in training mode and got a really good run on Endless before the game just decided no and crashed on me. And 3v3 mode was tons of fun. But even with all that out of the way, by the end of the first week, I had the basics down, so it was time to start hopping into ranked matches to see where I'd end up. Alright, the real show begins now. From here on out, the challenge is no longer about learning the game, but just about getting as good as possible, as fast as possible. And you know what? I was really feeling myself this first week of ladder matches. I was pushing them with stagger pressure, converting combos, guessing right, hitting my mix-ups, and of course that's not what happened. When were fighting games ever that easy? In reality, this week was probably the most volatile of the entire challenge. There were some huge highs and some really bad lows. A lot of this can be attributed to just how raw my gameplay was at this point in the challenge. Tons of interactions were just complete scrambles for me, and I was making a lot of mistakes in the process. I'll talk about the overall strategy I learned later on in the video, but for this week, my thought process went something like this. I'm gonna run up to you, that's non-negotiable, I'm gonna go slash, heavy slash, and if that hits, I go into bandit revolver. If not, I'll end the block string with gunflame. Did this plan have a lot of holes in it? Yes. Was I aware of these problems and did it anyways out of muscle memory? Also yes. But consider that this plan, flawed and brainless as it was kinda good enough for the skill level that I was at. Since most people were just mashing attacks at all times, you don't really need much thinking to counter hit them, and that's like the ideal situation for a Soul player. At the same time though, I wasn't here to just run the same strat every game that only worked against lower skill levels, so fixing the obvious flaws was a must if I wanted to get better. So what changes am I making? First, let's add in Fafnir as a block string ender. It's a great move to use as a very low risk frame trap, and at -3, you can even press some funny buttons and keep your turn. With this, our little flowchart is coming along pretty well, but don't get too attached to it, we're going to be taking out a lot of it by the end of this challenge. I learned a couple new combos as well in the meantime for this week. Comboing in Strive felt a lot more freeform than games I've previously played, but that could have also been because I'm just overall better at fighting games now, or because of the new resource meters like the burst meter. Aside from the tension gauge, used for like supers and Roman cancels, the burst meter is really the only other universal resource in the game. When the burst is full, you get a pretty simple combo breaker that you can pop basically whenever you're not getting grabbed, supered, or against the wall. As to how this relates to your own combos, Wild Assault, which spends half your burst, is a really good combo extender to get more damage, better positioning, or just keep your pressure going. So learning to incorporate it more into my combos and offense helped a lot going forward. This week marked the beginning of the ranked grind, so I appropriately started floor 5 before pretty quickly moving up to floor 6 after a couple games. But from here, things didn't really go the way you'd expect. I didn't actually plan on staying and playing on my assigned floor cause you get access to everything above your floor from the start, so I decided, well, if I actually wanted to get better, it'd be a lot more efficient to just fight players better than me. Whether or not this theory actually holds any weight though, we'll have to see. But regardless, that's what I was doing. So I moved myself up to floor 7 and promptly got destroyed. Yeah, I know that's kind of expected, but hey, I knew if I wanted to get better, losing and learning from my mistakes was really the only way I could go about it. You don't really learn too much by stomping on weaker opponents. Now, I know, I said I was getting beaten the fuck up at this floor, but there were some matches where I was actually able to hold my own. Like this one against an Asuka, I took 2-1 on day 12, and the mother of all lag matches where it felt like any moment my PC could just... But for every win I had in this range, there are at least 3 losses to balance it out, so in terms of results, I got pushed back down to floor 5. This was a repeated recurrence this week. I would just go back and forth this week between the 2 floors. I would stomp my floor 5 matches and immediately get stomped in floor 7. By the end of the week, I was getting kind of frustrated with this pattern and seeming lack of progress, and I knew I needed to shake things up more and change how I approached the game. The losing was obviously caused by something, losses don't just fall out of the sky, so I took a look at my gameplay and pinpointed a couple of the most important issues. First off, this strategy is way too predictable against people that actually pay attention, cause they'll just block through the whole thing and take their turn back. Watching these games back, I don't know how I didn't get punished more for the most brain-dead offense in the world, but I needed to fix this ASAP. Secondly, my approaches were just too simple. Everything was grounded, not enough dash blocking, it really looked like I was playing Street Fighter 6 in the wrong game, so I needed to incorporate way more air movement. Aside from those mechanical issues, I just needed a better way to get quick feedback on mistakes I was making, and on the 3rd week, I think I might have found my answer. But first, I gotta talk about my controller. Yeah, you see that bar at the bottom, you know what it is. Varmillo, yes, the keyboard company, sent me their new FK2, a leverless fighting game controller which I ended up using for this entire month so I could give a short review of it. They didn't give me any notes at all, so I'm basically allowed to say whatever I think, and I think it's pretty good. Personally, I really like the design and how clean the whole thing looks, as well as its size. Along with the 2 stick buttons being located symmetrically beside the up button, the right one makes it really easy to quickly RC. The buttons feel a little bit smaller when playing on it compared to other controllers I've had, but it wasn't really anything too noticeable and wasn't that much of an issue once I got used to it. And if you're like me, and like heading down to FGC tournaments, the case itself is a pretty helpful mini lap desk whenever you sit down to play at a setup. Honestly, a pretty neat addition. But that's really it for this portion of the video. If you want to pick up one of these yourself, or any of Varmillo's other keyboards, head to the link in the description, and I got a code, FrozenT, you can use at checkout. So remember to uninstall Honey, and let's get back into the video. This week I was really starting to get fed up with how I was playing. It was very clearly not working too well against better players, and I knew for a fact I could do better. At the start of the week, I promoted to floor 6 and then back down to floor 5. Now, I'll say it here, but floors aren't really a good indication of your skill level. In fact, I'd say they mean little to nothing around the area I was in, but I didn't know that at the time. I thought that I might be stuck bouncing between floor 5 and 6 for the rest of the month. So, I did what any reasonable person would do. I started to hit the tapes. I knew if I wanted to get any better, I couldn't do it without putting in some serious work outside the game. I started off just watching pro players and trying to see what they were doing and doing my best to figure out why. Then it was looking at wiki pages about frame data and mechanics and strategy, and all of a sudden I'm on a train station looking at my laptop, searching up how to purple RC option select wild throw, because I saw Tatuma do it like one time at EVO. Okay, that was a lot. Not a lot of my research was exactly essential for the level I was at, and I wasn't going to take it all in at once. So I boiled it down to a few key points that I could reasonably digest. First, let's take a look at this game plan. As I said before, this plan sucks. But why does it suck? Well, the simple answer is that they don't have to do anything to beat me. They could just sit there and block, and eventually they can go back to neutral or take their turn back. Great, there's a frame trap on Heavy Slash, but it doesn't matter if they don't press into it. There's no guessing in this situation for the opponent. So, let's introduce some guessing. Soul has some incredibly powerful options point blank. Close and far slash are both plus on block, allowing you to enforce block strings your opponent cannot mash out of. But, unlike our last plan, if our opponent doesn't move and just stays blocking, we're gonna throw them, and do the whole thing over again. This, in its essence, is what's referred to as a strike-throw mix-up. The onus is now on the opponent to guess when the throw's coming, cause if they tech or jump at the wrong time, they'll get comboed into oblivion, and the Soul's job is to just keep his next moves unpredictable. Now, I am not just oversimplifying this, but I am paving over the mountain of details about Soul's stagger pressure game and the litany of strive mechanics that people use to mess with this plan, but this, in its essence, is how I'm going to be running my offense going forward. But instead of just taking this directly into floor matches, I knew there was still a lot I needed to clean up in my play. And besides, it wasn't like I was just going to implement all of this in a day. So, I started playing casuals with some friends who were way better than me, and started getting feedback on how else to improve my game. And one thing stuck out like a sore thumb. The approaches were horrible. Barely jumping, predictable air dashing, bad dash blocking, the thinking part of my brain was just apparently on vacation in neutral. And having people there to tell me how predictable it was really helped shove this into the things I need to learn pile. These casual matches were honestly probably the most effective improvement I'd seen this entire challenge. Even if I was losing, I found myself actually thinking through fights slowly, and my decision making got better instead of autopiloting against floor 5s. Now, of course, different people are gonna improve at different speeds with different methods, but for me, this mix of games, feedback, and study was absolutely the fastest I'd ever improved in this game. I played like a 50 game set against a Potemkin, lost literally every single game, and I improved more from that set than like most of the second week of games. The feeling of getting better at something is one I wouldn't trade for anything else in this world. But I'm not done yet, cause we've still gotta climb up the floors for the rest of the week. I was back on floor 5, but after just a couple sets, I was able to move up to floor 6. Matches down here weren't exactly an issue for me anymore. I'd done this like a million times. It's around here that I started to notice that the guys down on these lower floors were just making the same mistakes I did. They were just trying to get their singular game plan going without much regard for the other side. So once you've disrupted the game plan, they start to scramble and get sloppy with their moves, and it's pretty simple to punish. Stagger pressure was also working way better than I thought it would, and I was stuffing these people. They never left the corner till they got wall broken. With that, I was able to just glide through even floor 6 and onto floor 7. The floor that gave me all that trouble beforehand. The floor where all of that frustration from how bad I was playing came from, and after all that practice, all of that improvement, you know what? It was really, really easy. It was easy. Seriously, it was super simple winning these games once I implemented my offense properly. I didn't feel like I was doing anything all that smart, but just being even a little bit unpredictable went a long way in this floor. I still made some mechanical mistakes, my meaty timings were really bad a lot of the time, but even when I made those mistakes, I'd still be able to BS my way through neutral one way or another, and by the end of the week, I'd hit floor 8. The climb this week felt way different than I'd expected. For one, like I mentioned before, it was pretty damn easy considering the pain I'd suffered through the last week, and the results of my improvement really showed through. Secondly, on the defensive end, it turns out playing even just a little more reactively gives fairly good results, especially on a character like Sol, who wants to terminate all social distancing any chance he gets. Of course, there were times to play proactive and aggressive and to get the show on the road, but waiting for your opponent to do some punishable shit and then blowing them up for it has to be one of the biggest dopamine kicks for any fighting game player. Then again though, I don't think a Sol player is the right guy to be telling you this, cause I'ma be honest, that's not why I picked up Sol. And it was after this climb up to floor 8 that I knew what the final stop for this 1 month journey was. Floor 10. Alright, it's the final week. It's floor 10 or bust. So, what's the plan? Well, since I'm already playing for it as the end goal, I might as well train in floor 10 as a start. Okay, that was not very nice. This is the week I found out demoting like this is pretty typical when you're starting out, cause to be completely real, I'm kind of over-dramatizing how hard it is to climb, but even then, spending a whole day losing in floor 10 and getting knocked back down all the way to floor 5 was pretty demotivating for the climb back up. But the week's only just started, and we've still got plenty of time to get better. I started playing more matches more frequently against better opponents and started studying more about the game. If you can't already tell at this point, I'm a bit of a lab rat when it comes to fighting games. I don't really know why, but I generally enjoy finding unique counters and interactions on my own rather than bumping into them in matches. Makes me feel more prepared, you know what I mean? Anyways, as I was playing more matches and learning more interactions, I realized I'd been completely forgetting something really fundamental to fighting games just in general. Just anti-airing people. I used to do this all the time in Street Fighter, but switching over somehow just changed how I thought about fighting games, and apparently this part didn't carry over. Strive has a universal anti-air in 6P. It's upper body invincible, making it also a good anti-poke tool, but I'm generally going to be using it to anti-air. A lot of beginners, myself included, like to air dash in a lot, so this will be a useful tool to get them off me. Plus, you can convert off of it if you know it's going to hit, so that's cool. Next thing I needed to fix was my meaty timings. My god, it was bad. Most of the time, when my strike throw would fail, it'd be because I got grabbed out of my close slash, and you know what? I can't even really blame them for doing it, because it worked a lot of the time. So, I spent a bit of time this week working on my timings, though by the end of the month, my close slashers weren't as tight as I'd like them to be, but hey, that'll just come with more experience. And while we're on the topic of things I was working on in the lab, let's talk about another part of Sol's game plan, the fast Roman cancel mix-up. You saw this footage earlier in the video, but you might not have completely understood yet what it was. This is the Bandit Revolver fast Roman cancel mix-up. Let's shorten that last part to FRC. An FRC is essentially a way to cancel the Roman cancel by inputting an attack during the short freeze at the beginning. This is used after Bandit Revolver to get your opponent to guess which option is coming, since you can hit overhead or low, or the forbidden art of just wild throwing them. But with that out of the way, we don't have much time left in the month, so let's get back to the climb. This grind's gonna be the last and longest one yet, and starting on day 25, I had only 5 days left until the end. Starting off, I was back to my old friend, Floor 5. It's been a while since I've been here, and it showed. My first match, I almost even dropped the game. Then afterwards, me and this Testament vibed out for a bit, really living up to the name there by the way, before I got sent to Floor 6, where it was the usual stomps here, and in Floor 7. There's not much to explain here since at this point I was just working on getting better at what I already knew, not really trying too much and simply adjusting my approaches depending on how my opponents reacted. Like here, in this set. This Dizzy was just stuffing my air dash approaches, mostly because they sucked and were slow, but by our next set, I'd adjust and just change it up to a normal jump, and it worked a lot better. By the end of our second set, I'd ranked up to Floor 8 and took a bit of a break from floor matches to just play some casuals. I took my time learning some more important skills like backdashing on defense when appropriate, and then immediately took that back into ranked, since I felt like I was on a roll. And after a few more close sets and an Asuka that turned into Amelia, I was out of there and onto Floor 9. The last stop before the end. It was day 30, so I knew if it was gonna happen, it was gonna happen today. Let's go! Yes! Ah, finally. Yes. And just like that, I'd reached the top in exactly 1 month. Now, let me point out the elephant in the room. If you play Strive, you know floor 10 isn't the highest you can go, not even close. If anything, floor 10 is just like a basic competency check to see if you know how to think through the game, and I barely passed that check. Your average Strive player would probably still beat me pretty easily. But then again, it felt awesome to finally get here and reach my goal for the month. You know, with floors not really being a good indication of where I stand in this game, I wonder if there's any other system to push myself with.
Next slide, please. Hi.
Well, guess I'm doing 100 days.